Welcome to Public Works Update. I'm Shannon Austin, your host, and on today's show, we're going to highlight something that we haven't talked about in a while, which is the west side growth. So with me today, I have Chad Comis, Nick Borns, and Aaron Fagerness, our local experts in our engineering division of Public Works. We're going to basically show you what happens behind the scenes during off-season of construction. So we're going to start with Chad. And Chad Comis, give us just a quick update on what you do for the city.
I'm the principal sanitary sewer engineer in the engineering department, coordinate with our maintenance and operations teams to try to make sure their needs are met as far as upgrading facilities and infrastructure such that they can do their job better. And then in addition to that, work on the capital plan and try to identify priorities for growth and sewer extensions for our sanitary sewer system.
Okay, and just for those that may not know the difference between Nick's job and your job, sanitary sewer is the dirty water, right?
The dirty water, when you flush the toilet, run the sink, and run the garbage disposal, that's where that goes.
Okay,
yes.
Perfect. So as we think about west side growth, and west side to me is probably west of Interstate 29, and basically down from Interstate 90 all the way down to T. How are we planning for that west side growth?
That's been a priority that we've been working on for many years, right? So we look at priorities around town. Right now, the projects in progress are on the west side, what we refer to as a Basin 15 project. We look at the needs and how are we going to serve that whole west side, as you had indicated. First, the sanitary sewer system is like the trunk of a tree. The largest collection system pipes need to go in first because you can't extend those out to those farther areas until you have that base of the tree in. So right now we're actually in the process, as I mentioned, of a project in construction, building some of that trunk of the tree per se with our Basin 15 project.
So we actually stopped out at the pump station or lift station earlier this past summer, saw some construction, really big hole in the ground. So what was that structure? I can't remember if it was a lift station or pump station. What is the difference?
Yeah, that is a lift station. They're more or less synonymous. Both lift water from a lower elevation up to a higher elevation. Some may discharge in a near vicinity to an equalization basin or another a higher elevation trunk that's nearby, or there may be a force main that's connected to the pump station that pushes it several miles to another facility that can receive that flow and let gravity do its job and take it to ultimately the treatment facility.
So with all of the upgrades that we just did to the treatment facility, which is over off of Sycamore and Benson, that we're not going to build another plant in Basin 15. Everything is being shipped to or pumped to the water reclamation facility?
Yes, that's correct. There's not any plans currently to build any treatment facilities. So indeed our master planning is to move all of our wastewater across. And you had asked about the big hole that you had seen. That was a major pump station. Right now we do have some capacity in other portions of our system that we can utilize to buy time, sometimes up to 20, 30, 40 years until we have to build and pump that flow all the way over to the wastewater treatment plant, as you had mentioned earlier. So we try to be efficient and phase or stage those capital improvements such that we're getting the maximum use out of our existing capacities we have available.
Okay, so you talked about the trunk being like the tree of a trunk. So I assume there's sanitary sewer branches that you're extending then south or north or of the pump station for people to be able to hook up to, then that can go then to the lift station to be pumped?
Yes, that's exactly correct. So again, we have the pump station that's north of 12th Street currently. That's under construction. We anticipate it and the following projects, which are extensions out from the pump station. They'll generally run from north of 12th Street down south to south of 12th Street to about 22nd Avenue. And so those are a larger diameter, and as we extend farther, they reduce in diameter. And so some of the priority has been in that 12th Street south over in the 41st Street area. We have to start at 12th and extend down from there. And then the trunk system or the sanitary sewer system generally follows gravity, and so it follows drainage channels as well. So that's the pattern of drainage. Cherry Creek flows from south to north in that vicinity, so our trunks are extended along that channel, generally speaking, to 22nd Street currently.
So you're stealing a little bit of Aaron's thunder there, so
Okay.
hang on to that
Yeah,
comment.
absolutely.
So we are putting in pipe down to 22nd Street. Are the future phases then, is this, will they go down to past 41st Street, or where is that southern boundary then for this Basin 15?
Yes, so 22nd is what we have in our capital plan right now. There's other priorities in other parts of the city where we're allocating funds at this moment past, beyond 22nd Street. But indeed, that basin does extend. We look at it as bands of growth. Obviously, as the city grows, generally speaking, there's a demand, if you can imagine bands drawn outward. So in this case, we're going down approximately to 41st Street is somewhat of our next priority after we can get this project built. And then it does go all the way down to 69th Street.
Okay.
Approximately, and then there's another basin that flows a different direction, more or less, from that point.
So just with Basin 15 then, how many acres for development is actually open then with this current phase of Basin 15?
Yes, Basin 15 is approximately 3,100 acres right now, with most immediate able to be served. Generally speaking, and those areas are around and near the trunk that is being installed, again, from 12th Street down to 22nd Street. The larger trunks have to be extended farther before we can increase and get more acres to be served. But all in that proximate vicinity, about 3,100 acres is what we're looking at.
So how are we paying for those improvements with the pump station as well as the sanitary sewer pipes? How are we paying for those projects?
Yes, so those phases are a combination of state revolving loan funds from the state of South Dakota, and we had received some grant funds from an ARPA grant application that was provided. The three phases of the project now is a pump station, and then trunks that I mentioned several times. That's about a $56 million project, and we were fortunate enough to receive about $14 million in ARPA funds through a housing application. So the funding is mostly loans and grants.
And so then the repayment of those loans then are basically user fees, right?
The repayment for those trunk extensions, in most cases, we try to recapture those costs through cost recovery fees. So in this spring, actually, was a very exciting time for us. We approved by ordinance is this system capacity charge, which is a mechanism that as development happens, those charges, the cost we incurred, in this case to repay loans, but the system capacity charge can also be used to repay user fees. Those charges are recouped to offset the cost for this infrastructure.
Well, it seems like a pretty good plan then.
Yeah, it works.
So I'm going to hop over to Nick Borns, who is our water principal engineer. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do for the city?
Absolutely. So basically kind of parallel to Chad. So I provide engineering support to the water purification plant and their team, and then work to develop the capital plan for water. And then my team works with developers and consultants on plan reviews for CIP plans and for development plans.
So continuing on that same topic of west side growth, how are you preparing to meet the available acres that Chad is opening up with sanitary sewer? How do you respond to that?
Well, we had a really kind of nice opportunity to take advantage of kind of two things at once, I guess. We've got a third connection to our Lewis and Clark system. This is going to be coming online. And that project will allow us to bring more water into Sioux Falls through Lewis and Clark, who were one of 20 member owners, the city of Sioux Falls is.
Very good.
And then with this project, it's 2 miles of transmission main from 12th Street and Ellis Road, from that intersection, to 2 miles to the west to 467th Avenue. And that will be kind of running right through that area that Chad will be able to serve with that Basin 15 project. So kind of just a two-part solution to the one project, I guess.
So is that pipe already in the ground, or is it going to be constructed in the next couple of years, or what is your timeline of that?
So a little bit of both. We broke it up into a two-phase project. So we've got phase one was completed in 2025, and then phase two will be completed in construction season 2026. That phase will be the remainder of the transmission main, and then we're also going to have a meter building in connection to the Lewis and Clark pipeline, and then we're doing some improvements in a reservoir to be able to better utilize that water as well.
So are you the same as sanitary, where you are lifting and pumping, or talk us through how does water get to my faucet?
Sure. A little different with water. It's pressure.
Okay.
So we've got a hydraulic grade line that we maintain. All that means is basically the water towers that are in the air. The height is by design to maintain a certain amount of pressure at a certain elevation. So that's what we aim for. That third connection to Lewis and Clark, you could actually think of that kind of like a water tower, because we actually ask for a specific hydraulic grade line that they'll be bringing that water to us, so it kind of maintains that pressure just like a water tower would.
Okay, so you don't have to treat that water from Lewis and Clark. It basically, as soon as it gets put in the pipe, then it branches out to all of our drinking water users?
You're exactly right.
Very good.
Yep. So their water, the raw water is extracted from the Missouri River aquifer near Vermilion. It's treated at the water purification plant for Lewis and Clark near Vermilion, and then it's pumped to the north to the 20 member owners.
So will any of, and maybe you don't know this answer, will any of the water for the west side come from our water purification plant, or will it all come from Lewis and Clark?
Most of it's going to come from Lewis and Clark. There might be some blending where we'll be near I-29 and 26th Street where our west reservoir is.
Okay.
And that west reservoir, we can actually bring water from the water purification plant to there, pump it into the west side, or we can bring it from this new connection to the west reservoir and then bring it into the central part of Sioux Falls. So really this connection, it allows us to keep up with the growth and the demand. Then it also gives our operators kind of the ultimate flexibility of being able to operate our system in whatever manner is most efficient to them. And it might make a difference if it's in the summer or in the winter or at night or in the morning. And the improvements we're doing with that connection, specifically at that reservoir, will allow them to do that.
Okay, so much like the sanitary side of it, getting water down to like 41st Street, Nick, do you have to add more pipes to be able to meet the growth area that Chad is serving, or do you already have pipes in the area where you just needed another source?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
We've got just a really good transmission kind of infrastructure network built.
Okay.
But we do know that we have some needs for additional transmission projects to be able to really maximize the use of Lewis and Clark. So even when this connection goes in place, we'll be able to use more Lewis and Clark water. But as we continue to grow, we're going to have to maximize the water we can use out of those connections. To do that, we'll have to add more transmission mains on the west side.
On the west side, okay. So what will it look like when you connect at Lewis and Clark? Will there actually be a tower there, or is it more just a building, or how do you make that connection?
That's a terrific question and a great point. So when we make this connection, we're going to also build a meter building.
Okay.
So that'll kind of be the hub where we're connected and we're metering the water. We've got the kind of that infrastructure in place to meter and protect the separation between the systems. Eventually, we're going to put a water tower there. So as of right now, we're just planning for kind of like a bigger area that's going to be kind of the footprint of that connection point, because we do plan on having a water tower there. And the reason for that is it's just, well, for one thing, the elevation's right for a water tower. And then another reason for that is that right at that connection point, it's a very efficient place to I guess, store water and have it at that hydraulic grade line that we need because we're able to pump it straight from Lewis and Clark into that tower.
Sure. So it makes good economical sense as well as elevation sense
It
to
does.
put it right there. Okay. All right. Well, certainly last but not least on the storm drainage side. And so Aaron Fagerness, kind of discuss or give us an idea what you do for the city of Sioux Falls.
Okay, so my role is very similar to Chad and Nick, only I deal with the stormwater drainage.
Okay, and that's
So-
storm rain events,
Yep,
right? Okay.
rain events, river flooding events, that
Okay.
sort of thing. We work closely with our maintenance teams to make sure all the drainage ways and pipe systems, the underground storm pipe systems are open and clear and functional. And we also coordinate with city, different groups in the city for planning and preparing for development and
Okay.
projects like
So
that.
much like sanitary, drainage is gravity, right? Do we
Correct.
have any pump stations or lift stations for storm, for the
We
storm
do.
drainage?
We have one small lift station at Minnehaha Country Club.
Okay.
We're actively investigating additional lift stations at different areas, primarily around the levee,
Okay.
where during high river events, the local storm systems can be blocked by the river.
Got it.
So we look at ways to get the water into the river corridor to get the water out of town.
Okay. So as we look at that west side, west of Ellis from 12th Street all the way down, let's say to 41st Street, it's there's quite a few tributaries or creeks that go into that area that eventually drain into Skunk Creek, which then eventually drains into the Big Sioux River. Is it going to be challenging to develop on that west side with all of those creeks and drainage ways?
Yes, very much. The topography on the west side of town is very flat. So where the water goes when there's a flood event or a rain event, it sprawls out and moves slowly through the system. Chad mentioned earlier Cherry Creek. We also have Willow Creek. Those flow into Skunk Creek. So there's a large convol whatever. There's the west side's a bowl where that collects
Okay.
all this drainage into Skunk Creek and then into the Big Sioux River. And it is very challenging. So FEMA has studied a lot of that area. FEMA, they look at larger drainage ways, and they'll prepare maps of where they think the water is going to flood during a large event. So once they map it, there are additional regulations and additional coordination required that we have to work through.
Okay, so it may not be as easy as just opening up the entire basin because there's sanitary sewer and there's water, but now that we have to consider the drainage challenges. So maybe not all of those acres, the 3,100 acres that Chad can open up are even developable. Is that right?
That's a fair statement.
Okay.
So FEMA is taking a step back. We typically design for a 1% event, which means 1% chance of occurrence any
Okay.
particular year. It's also called a 100-year event.
Okay.
That's the area that they're mapping. And when you try to work in that area or fill in that area, we're very cautious to make sure you're not affecting your neighbors upstream or downstream or causing negative effects on that related to the drainage.
Okay, so there you talked about a floodplain and then mentioned the floodway. What's the difference between the floodway and the floodplain?
So a floodway is part of the floodplain, and that's the main river course that carries the bulk of water during a flood event. There's also a flood fringe, which is the higher ground next to the channel, and so the floodplain's broken up into those two pieces, a floodway and a flood fringe. For the city, we regulate them very similarly. They both have pretty stringent requirements. If you are trying to develop in the floodway, you may have to take an extra step and actually remap it with FEMA through a FEMA process.
And that's what we're doing right now with FEMA to remap some of those floodways on the west side, or?
Well, what we're doing, so we have some ongoing studies where both FEMA is evaluating different areas of Sioux Falls, and then we have a study that's more city initiated.
Okay.
But they're studying the drainage ways and mapping them. They will map floodways and it'll result in a better understanding of where the risks are related to flood events.
Okay, so where Nick and Chad just put in large trunk mains, we have box culverts, or do we have drainage ways that you'd prefer to keep the rain or the storm drainage in a pipe, or is it better to keep overland flow or
Yeah, I'd say overland flow is
Okay.
better, excuse me, because there's room for storage, extra
Got it.
room for the water to flow through. When you constrict it to a pipe or a box, you don't have that extra ability to pass water for events larger than the 100-year or
Sure.
that sort of thing.
So, so Nick and Chad, sounds like they will have their pipes in place in the next year, maybe to end of 26, early 27. When will your floodplain and floodway mapping study be done? Will that be done at around the same time, do you think?
So the FEMA study that's going on has had some setbacks or reconfigurations. They're expecting those maps to become final around 2030 now.
Okay.
So that'll be after those other projects we discussed. The city study that's looking at Skunk Creek and some of those other more major drainage ways on the west side, that will probably be on a shorter timeline. I'd expect that 2026 or 2027.
Okay. So it seems like we're all in the same deadlines, if you wanted to call them that end of 26, early 27. But it doesn't just happen like that. I mean, growth and development takes time. So I'm going to direct back a couple more questions to Chad. So as soon as we open up a basin, to get houses and to get water mains and to get storm drainage and to get streets, which of course is my forte, it takes a while, right? I mean, so when do you anticipate that we'll start to see, really a lot of houses going up and getting that first big growth spurt on that west side?
The end of 2026 is when we expect our project to be complete. We've had different coordination efforts and questions from developers in that 22nd Street area. We are able and willing to work with them as they schedule and sequence their phases for connection to our system at any time, frankly, after more or less 2027.
Okay.
But the whole development process of, as Nick had mentioned earlier, of reviewing the water availability, reviewing the floodplain, streets, what's the capabilities. That's an organized process through our tier maps, as you're obviously well aware. We try to signal where they're available in those timeframes. And the bulk of those acres, the 3,100 that I mentioned earlier, is right in that 12th Street to 41st Street area.
Sure.
But that connection process is really developer dependent.
Yeah.
And we aren't going to advise that they need to wait to start their processes in 27 if they are able to start sooner. It's just that we can't give final approval and allow connections and flows until we actually have our pump stations operating and sending it where the plan is.
Yeah, and I think I've been in those meetings also where the streets, as you said, we need to get the streets there. So the sanitary may be there and the water may be there, but streets and storm drainage, if Aaron tells me I need a bridge over some of those drainage ways, that's a pretty big expense that we have to coordinate and try to figure out how we coordinate those. So there's still a lot to look at, even though we have sanitary and water and drainage. Now we got to go to streets next. Well, thank you all for your time today. I certainly appreciate this deep dive into the west side growth. And thanks, Sioux Falls, for watching. Probably a little teaser for the January episode. We will be talking about streets and the long-range plan for streets for the next 25 years. So if you thought this was interesting, wait till you see the January episode. So until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the streets.